And try to set an intention that makes the hope that that this will be of some benefit to your own mind, even if it's just by gaining some information or knowledge, but that this benefit won't just stay with you, that it will ripple out to benefit others. The more each of us works on our own peace of mind, reducing our anger, our impatience, reducing our miserliness, reducing our craving, reducing our desire to get our own way, reducing that self-centered attitude. All of these things benefit ourselves and everybody who comes in contact with us. So that's a wonderful thing. So with that idea, let's recite the 4 immeasurables on page 34. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. So how are we doing with that last one? My personal favorite, equanimity. Every time I watch the news, I'm aware of how that's not such an easy thing to accomplish. So anyway, so did people have family visits? Did they go well? Lots of things to rejoice, regret? Yes, Dorothy.
Well, I did what you said. I knew people were coming, and I just, because I was glad that they were coming, I tried to ignore things that were bothering me. I just let it go. And so I had a very good time.
Excellent. It's amazing how much the mind that we bring to situations can really determine the outcome. By just being able to focus on, the other people present, whatever. Whatever we're choosing, if we focus on what we don't like or what we don't want to have happen, then we'll be miserable. If we focus on, I'm getting to spend time with people I care about, then things can go a little easier. But it just depends. But it really does. There's no question if we come in with an attitude that says, if they don't act perfectly this time, that's it. I'm out of here. We're going to see all those things that annoy us. It's just like we've got radar going. And so if we have a different kind of radar happening where we're looking for what we cherish, instead of what we don't like, then, we're more likely to even notice the good stuff. So that's just in these little ways, we can see how we have some power over whether we suffer or not. By just checking in with ourselves before we do something and say, what am I bringing to this picture? Have I got some preconceived notion? Have I got some attitude that's going to impact on how this unfolds? So it can be really, yesterday I got on a plane coming back from my family visit, got on a plane, and I was very tired, and I don't like to fly, and so my attitude was one of, oh, finally, you know, I'm getting on, you know how you have to get there really early, and it takes forever, and finally, oh, I'm gonna be on the plane, I'm gonna sit down, you know, I even was one of those people who checked my bag when they requested people to check their bag, you know, and all this stuff, and I'm feeling very, you know, so I get on the plane, I'm one of the last people, because I'm in group D or something, I didn't even know there was a group D, but I was in group D, so I get on the plane, I get to my seat, and the person standing there says, do you mind if I take your seat, so I can sit next to my wife and baby? And of course, what can you say to that? You have to say yes. There's absolutely no, and if you're dressed like this, you really have to say yes. But I just looked at the seat number, which was like row 22. I think it was second to last, you know, and went forward and sat down. I mean, I didn't say anything. It was just like, and it was, you know, and the whole way back to the back of the plane, I'm going, this is what it is. You know, you have this expectation. You're finally getting on the plane. You're going to get to sit there, and you're going to be in the aisle seat. So if you want to throw up, you can get up easily. I had a whole week of throwing up, so it wasn't a great week. But, you know, and everything's going to be good. No, instead I'm sitting on the last row, you know, where the plane goes like this, and I'm on the window seat, so if I have to throw up, too bad. You know, all of that stuff, and I'm thinking, I am making myself miserable. You know, I'm playing out the worst case scenario. You know, at least I didn't look at the person like, how dare you ask me to give up my seat? Because I didn't feel that way. Because of course you want to let, you know, a young couple with their baby sit together, you know, or anybody who wants to sit together when you're traveling alone. But it's just so funny how we have these clear examples, clear experiences, you know, regularly, that show us how we make ourselves suffer, you know, and that if we can just get a grip and let go of those ideas about what we want to have happen, or things should happen this way, or why can't they happen this way, which was sort of my mood yesterday. Please let it just go easy, you know, which of course, it did go easy if I didn't fight it. There was nothing difficult. So it's very amusing. So of course, by the time I sat down, I was over it, you know. So we just have to, you know, recognize, oh, I have a bad attitude. You know, I can fix that. I can fix my bad attitude. And then the situation changes. Instead of making it the other folks' responsibility, which you cannot change. So we really just need to look at where is the suffering coming from. And often we're going to find it's coming from our own minds, our own mindset. So we have to work with that. And that's the good news. We can work with that. That's under our control. You know, unlike, you know, the canceled flights, the bad weather, or the, you know, sick child on the plane or whatever. I mean, all of those things. We can't control those things, but we can control how we respond to them. And so when we allow ourselves to recognize that we are creating, you know, a story in our minds that's impacting how we feel, then we can get in there and tinker with that and change it. So like Joy's example, which is a much better example of success in the practice, you know, is that you prepare yourself in advance for any situation that perhaps has some power, you know, like family visits have a little bit of power for most of us. We're kind of invested in the outcome. And we're either invested in proving that we're right about our families, and they really are kind of difficult, or, you know, whatever it is, you know. So we want to, we do that in meetings, at work, we do that with our interactions with others that we find difficult. We come in with this agenda, and we want to be able to recognize and remove it because it gets in the way of our own happiness, as well as, you know, it impacts everything. It actually changes the outcome of events. I feel like this is pushing up. So, I must sit up straight. Okay. So what's up with you guys? Now that I've revealed my embarrassing, like, 5 seconds of, you know, like, I'm not a nice person.
But did you throw up?
I did not throw up. I thought that was a very nice thing.
Yeah.
So I was rejoicing about that. And the plane in the back really does
It does.
sway a lot.
It does.
So I thought, okay, I must be well. That was also good to know. So, anyway, I had food poisoning last week, so I had a tough time. So, anybody else have any? Yeah.
I just want to comment on what you just mentioned. I've spent a lot of time looking at what I bring to situations, but over the past week or so, what I've really been looking at is what I bring to myself
Okay.
in terms of my attitude about who I am, how I relate to myself on a daily basis, whether I'm looking at myself with judgment and criticism or with compassion and understanding. And that almost kind of automatically then carries into relationships with others. And I don't know why, but that seems to have been quite the revelation lately for me. And it's really allowed me to settle down quite a bit.
And this is one of those recognitions. We really, you know, the more that we can notice what's going on in our minds and see either, it's all about relationship with ourselves, relationship with others, you know. If we can just recognize that we bring our minds to every moment. So if our habit of mind is one that is unskillful, then that's going to affect how we're experiencing every moment, you know? So when we can kind of go, oh, you know, I'm really beating up on myself, or I really have no expectation of me being able to succeed in whatever it is. You know, we need to, you know, we can see how that's going to drain us of energy, going to, you know, it's like self-sabotage, you know. These are the ways in which, you know, like Lama Zopa Rinpoche and Lama Yeshe, who are the founders of these centers around the world, you know, like to say, you know, we think impossible. You know, we think, you know, we've, you know, hear some story and we'd like to be able to help, and then we think, oh, it's impossible. You know, impossible, impossible, impossible. Well, what can you do if that's where your starting point is? So if you think that way about yourself, you know, that you're not good enough, that you can't do this, that you're not very competent, that you're da-da-da-da, well, that's not, you know, you've got a lot to overcome just to, you know, breathe your next breath. It's really important that we recognize the ways we do this to ourselves. It's, you know, and so and then we do it to others. We, you know, it's like, if we think that this is that bringing in the agenda, and that agenda may be just your idea of how this is going to unfold. You know, not what you want to have happen, but what you think will happen, or what you expect to happen. And that expectation can make it play out that way. That's that self-fulfilling prophecy idea. You know, we come up with phrases like self-fulfilling prophecy because they happen. Because we do that. We influence our outcomes by the way we think. Because we either notice opportunities or we don't. We either see, you know, the way we connect with each other or we don't. And that can come from this wall we built of expectations, you know, or preconditions. And then it closes doors to what can happen. Or we can just miss what's happening. We can interpret what happens according to that mindset, even if that's not the case. Have you ever had a conversation with a friend after an event, and it's like you weren't at the same place? You know? And it's not necessarily that either one of you are accurate, it's just that's what we do. We bring in our ideas of things and what's important to us, our attachments, our aversions, you know, and that filters everything. And then we think it's played out that way because we haven't come in with an open mind. We've just seen how it goes, what happens. Also, this idea that, I don't know, how many people are goal-oriented? How many people who are not honest with themselves are so, one of the difficulties with our expectations is they imply a result, don't they? And that's kind of weird if you really think about it. We're talking about interactions with people, you know, and it's like the interaction's not enough. It has to produce something, you know? And in one way, if you look at, you know, teachings on cause and effect, you know, they do produce things, our interactions with each other, you know, but it's as if it has to have some, like, I had a good meditation this morning. You know, we treat everything like a meeting that needs an out, you know, that has an agenda, you know, and then has, you know, a particular goal in mind. And that may be appropriate to a meeting, especially a planning meeting, you know. But is that how we want our relationships in general to be? You know, as opposed to the experience that's happening. You know. If you're thinking about the goal, I mean, it's just like we just need to be very aware of how quickly our mind goes from what our expectations are, then the event itself, right? But you're kind of looking just at the goal. You know, you're now in it, and you're evaluating everything according to this sort of result. So you're not experiencing it then because you're thinking about the future, you know? And then afterwards, you know, it's like you actually, during it, you're already on the next thing. What am I doing after this? So the part of actually experiencing what happens is really clouded by all these other things. These, like the result, the expectation, what I'm doing next, you know, and that's I think so often how you kind of hear three-part words in a sentence. You know, you kind of, did he just insult me? You haven't heard any part, you know, most of the conversation because you're in this future thing or the past thing, but you catch a few words and then you overreact, you know, you don't want to miss that opportunity to defend yourself, and, you know, and then there's misunderstandings arise. No, that's not what I meant, you know. So we want to watch how we create these misinformation by not really being there to experience it. It's all happening in our heads. And because it's all happening in our heads and we're not even paying attention to what's happening. Does that make any sense, or am I just going, blah, 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 blah? You know? It's hard to describe the mind, isn't it? Because it's a mess in there.
Well, when everything's going well, it's so easy to be nice to people.
Until it stops going well. You know, I thought I was a perfectly nice person yesterday until that person asked me to move seats.
I found the key to get people to move for you. You walk up and say, can I sit next to some of you wonderful skinny people?
Oh, that works. So, but this is the thing, isn't it? So we really want to recognize that that if we quit exhausting ourselves with playing these scenarios in our mind, and instead experience what's happening, it may unfold, we may actually experience what unfolds. Not what we think's gonna unfold, what as, and all that judgment. If we come in with an agenda or an expectation, then we're comparing everything to that. And that is a setup. Because then, even if something else happens that you might like, you miss it because it isn't what you're looking for. And I think family visits, family gatherings are often very rich with this kind of experience because we have a long history with our families. So it's kind of easy to see our expectations if we're looking, if we're just checking in with our minds. And so this is why I'm always talking about that. For me, I feel this little discomfort in my diaphragm, I guess. I don't know where it is. Maybe yes. I don't know. I didn't study biology, so. But I feel this little, and it may be that kind of, I'm slightly holding my breath. But that's when I know I'm not comfortable. And as soon as I know I'm not comfortable, if I just look, I can usually see my expectation glaring me in the face. I thought this would happen or not happen, and I don't like this happening or not happening, all that kind of thing. But I'm agitated now, and the earlier I can catch it, the less I act from that discomfort. I can just get my own, yes.
I have a situation where my mother is a very, very bright person, but over the past few years, I can see that she's getting more cognitively impaired. So when I'm around her, I'm waiting for the next example of how cognitively impaired she's becoming. That's what I'm looking for, and then I don't want to be around her because I don't want to see that. And then that's all I remember from the experience is that one or
So
two.
These are those kinds of scenarios where, when we realize that's what's going on, then we can sit when we're alone, when we're not visiting, and work out what is it about. What is it for me? Where am I in this picture? What are my fears? What are my sufferings around this? So that we can have our grief. Sometimes, I know with my dad, when he was losing his mind, there was a lot of grief, but that was about me, so we can address that separately so that we can be more open when we're present, because it's not easy. I remember, even when it's not a cognitive, clearly, but I just remember when when I got to a certain age and I realized it's really not fair of me to ask my parents for advice anymore, because they've been there, done that. I'm an adult now. I'm supposed to figure this out, And if I had asked for their advice, that means I'm worried about something, and then they know I'm worried about something, and then that just, So but you have to grieve the loss of not having that parent to turn to. It's like, oh, now I'm the one who's making these decisions. Other people rely on me now. So we have a loss there. This is the flow of things, and it's just. But we just need to recognize that there's a part of us when we have that little catch that we don't like it. And we have to be able to let go. Because that not liking it distorts how we interact. We want it to be different. And that desire for it to be different, or not change, or go back to the way it was, is a wall between us and others. You know, we were all that cute once. Talk about change. So, but this is that, just recognition that our grasping at something to stay the same, or even our grasping at something to change, is part of how we suffer. You know, it's that mindset that is causing us to suffer. Because even in those, you know, like you might quit spending time with someone because they're not the same, you know, and then, you know, after they're gone, you regret that. That's a no-win situation. So it's really worth checking in and you know, dealing with what's going on for you, because this is that self-compassion where we have to go, I am hurting from this change, you know, and this is part of the suffering, the truth of suffering. This is what our lives are like. It's constant change, constant hellos and goodbyes. It's, you know, and if we can't find a way to be okay with that is how it is, then we will always be up against this rough spot. You know, and that will disadvantage us. We will miss opportunities, we'll miss experiences because we're walling ourselves from them. And that seems like, you know, why not? But it doesn't work. The why not is because it doesn't work. This idea that we can protect our hearts by walling it in is a reflection of ignorance. It's not like that. Because the reality is, being walled off is the opposite of what we actually desire, which is the feeling of non-separateness. So the more that we, you know, try to not be dependent, interconnected, interdependent, you know, we don't, you know, the less we provide conditions for happiness. But it isn't easy. Eventually, apparently, it gets easier. The more we have wisdom, the more that we can understand that things are impermanent. Well, if you accept the Buddha's teachings, that this isn't the only life you get, that our consciousness continues, that the consciousness, just like physical particles, you know, that nothing goes away. It just, you know, what would you call it? I wish I rearranges. So just like the physical, you know, keeps changing, you know, but our minds, our consciousness doesn't cease. Just the way in which we're experiencing this kind of existence changes. We change hotels with our bodies. So this idea that we're independent, separate, isolated, the more that we recognize how interconnected we are, how interdependent we are, you know, the less we can feel isolated. You know, that we can actually know amongst a room of people we don't know their names, we don't know who they are, but we can know in that room pretty much everyone has had the same kinds of experiences of joy, loss, hopes, you know, all of that stuff. Because we're not different. We think we're so different because we look different, we speak differently, we have different goals in this life, whatever. But at the heart of it all we don't want to suffer, and we want happiness. It's really very, very simple. And we don't have a clue what we're doing. That's pretty universal too, so. Yeah, but these habits, these tendencies we have to build fortresses around our heart, you know, to shield ourselves, you know, is part of our suffering mind. It's our unskillfulness. And it's very self-absorbed. I want to protect, you know, I don't want to know what's going on with you because I need to protect myself. And the irony is, we will suffer less if we don't try to protect ourselves that way. That's the part that's hard to get. So, this, you know, yeah, we can't just fix everything. We can't see problems in the world and then, you know, just have a solution. That's not within our abilities. But we can see opportunities to help that are within our sphere and do that. You know, and pray that there are other people in other people's spheres. You know, this is how we can ripple out. You know, if we help the people around us, and they help the people around them, and they help the people around them, and they help the people around them, eventually we've got the whole planet covered. You know. And it's that recognition that in spite of all the fabricated boundaries that we create, you know, of nations, of cities, of blocks, city blocks, of neighborhoods, all this stuff. In spite of all that, it's a whole bunch of beings with minds trying to live, and preferably the least painful way possible. So that's a matter of just trying to be there, you know, and every opportunity that you can see, how can I make this life for this person, this moment, better? And we will benefit as a result. Like, imagine that scenario on the plane. If I had just looked at that woman, I didn't even look at the woman with the baby. I just, you know, because, you know, if I had just looked at the woman with the baby, I would have been happy to help. You know, I love babies. You know, I just would have been delighted to help. Because it wouldn't have been about me. So we need to, you know, so sure, I don't get the seat I want, the one I picked out, blah, 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 you know. So, you know, but we make a big deal about getting our way, you know, at the expense of missing these opportunities to share happiness with others. You know, and that's, you know, that's a no-win situation. Because my attitude, of course, didn't make that couple feel good. I mean, I didn't say anything, I didn't, you know, but the lack of saying anything, the lack of doing anything, I'm sure, you know, until the first, you know, whatever they had to do to comfort their child came up, they were kind of just sitting there feeling icky because, you know, I clearly wasn't thrilled with this opportunity to help them. Hey, Brian. So it's just this, and then our lives are really moments like this, one after the other. Yeah.
When I get on a plane, I like to be by myself so I can read, you know, and when things like that happen to me, I've always flipped into the mode, well, I wasn't supposed to be in that seat anyway. Well, there was another seat that's meant for me, you know. I think that can help a lot of people.
Mostly can
like
just
that.
help if you if you just don't think about me and to begin with.
Exactly, and if I were to have had that seat and that baby started screaming and crying.
I did think of that.
Oh, there would have been, you know, then I wouldn't have had my quiet.
Yes.
So
Oh, no, it's
when
true.
I see situations like that, I would be very happy to go to the back row.
The trouble is that just continues to be about you.
Yeah.
You
Yes.
know, It isn't actually trying to change that mind of not having you be in there, you know? So that's the thing that we want to try. I mean, we start there so that we can see there's even some benefit to myself of you know, not sitting next to the crying baby. But it's of course she wasn't. But, and I don't even know if it was a girl, because I completely was thinking about myself. So, you know, but this is the thing, is that we want to go beyond just, how do I reframe this for it to be okay with me, to where it isn't about you at all. That's where we want to head, is where it's really just, I'm happy to help. If this will help, I'm happy to help. Yeah.
So is it thinking about me when I also remember when I was in a situation like that, and I wouldn't have wanted to have been alone, I would have wanted to be with the family. Is that also thinking about me when I think, well, you know, I let them sit together, of course, why should one sit? You
Right.
know, I mean, let them have that vacation, that trip together, you
Right.
know, a little more enjoyable. I don't think that's thinking about.
That's correct.
Right, okay. Just
So
wanted to
then you're
clarify.
using your own experience as a
Yes.
way of finding that common ground,
Yeah.
that we're all the same, and of course, I would want that too, and then
Yeah.
you have the opportunity to give that to them.
Yeah.
You know, so it really is sort of subtle, because it's not about using the pronoun I, it's about using, you know, what is your focus?
Mhm.
Are you just trying to spin the story so it's more palatable to you? Or are you trying to really look for the opportunity for someone else? You know, so that's how we have to go. Yes?
I actually want to bring up with Jackie some example about your knee surgery. You remember how you said when the doctor said it's a bummer, you know, your surgery doesn't go well, and she's like, no, I'm happy. I'm on that 10 or 15% of the people whose surgery didn't go well, because I'm happy for these people who actually have a well surgery. I'm like, this is a good approach. Do not think about yourself, or
Right.
you know, like prize yourself, or you
Right.
know, just thinking about how the other people benefit of your actions.
And this is why it's so important to practice. You know, we have to practice that mind that says, oh, I am thrilled to be in the 1% that has this bad reaction, because somebody's got to be in that 1% to have that bad reaction, so I'd like it to be me instead of the other 99% of the people. You know, I mean, it's like, that takes quite a bit of practice, you know? So that's just why we have to reflect and see these opportunities, and then really look, how can I look at this differently? What is it? You know, like, it's the old, you know, what's the great news about catching the red light? You know, everybody else gets the green one. And really starting to enjoy that.
I wish I could hear the Jackie before. You remember when we went to the garden and they have this little trolley there, and we all stay in a line to get in that trolley to have a tour, and this is once an hour. And sure enough, Johnny and I, the last one, and we don't get in this trolley. I was so pissed. I'm like, we was there first. Why we was last? And if I hear the Jackie before that,
Well,
maybe I'm gonna say, good for these people. They got that.
That's right.
But no.
Well, but then now you've got the two together to remember the
I
next
know.
time. You know, that this is the thing. It's like, oh, I have a choice here. We need to remember that with our minds, we always have a choice. You know, we can follow our habit of going, it's not fair. You know, because I had those thoughts. I was sitting there thinking, hey, I bought my ticket early enough to pick this seat. If this couple had just bought their tickets earlier, they could have picked seats together. Stupid O's.
Pay even for it.
I'm not kidding. You know, it's just, you know, but what's wonderful is if you can look at these things with a different attitude of stepping back and going, I am being ridiculous here, you know, and laughing at yourself at how ridiculous we can be, you know, then we can move forward. And the reason why this little stuff, because obviously, here, I mean, it's a plane ride, you know, no big deal. You know, you didn't get on the trolley, you know, these are no big deal things. But those little stuff helps us so that when it's a big deal, like not having a good outcome in the surgery, it doesn't disturb you. But we have to practice with the small stuff where it really isn't a big deal, you know, so that then when we're working with the harder stuff, we have some practice. We have a little bit, you know, we have some tools to rely upon. And then with the important stuff that we already, you know, like are experiencing, like with your mom, you know, that's a big deal. You know, that the force of the relationship or the love or the just whatever, the karmic connection, you can use that as a motivator to work on it, even without having a lot of practice yet. But the relationship itself, because you really want it to not be harmed by the circumstances, to, you know, that you work extra hard. So it's just, you know, we have to all find with these ways in which of recognizing there's a choice here. You know, which choice do I want to make? And then you know, and then you fail. Big surprise. When you're trying something new, you fail. That's okay. It's just that, you know, if you can just keep trying, eventually you'll get the hang of it. Because we have that capacity, yeah.
What I find around me is other people's ideas or how they feel, and they try to push it on you, especially if you're seeing it in a positive way and they're not, they try to.
Yeah, it's good to keep your mouth shut. It's really true. If you sit there at the family gathering and go, oh, but, you know, and somebody says something like, me, and you go, oh, you could look at this a different way. They're not going to like you much. You know, it's like,
It's not just family.
no, it's not just family. I'm just using family because, like, I don't date much. The people I hang out with are my family. So, you know, sorry. But it's just this, you know, so it is. But it's this, you know, we really need to recognize that what sometimes people hear if we express this effort to try to look at it a different way is what they hear is you're criticizing how I see it. You know, or what they hear is you're not hearing my pain, you know. So, you know, we just need to accept that we're working on our inner process, and we don't need to push that on someone else either. You know, so it's because you're right. People have a pushback habit. We have a tendency to, you know, I don't know about you, but I often, you know, have a tendency not to want to be corrected. I have a tendency not to want, you know, these are the things. So we have to, it can work. If we have friends, you know, with our friends, sometimes we can say, oh, you know, how about this way of looking at it? Would this help, you know? But, so, you know, we have to be other-centered so that we see, you know, so that we can try to take in what we are hearing from them to inform us about what might be useful or not to share. Because it's, you know, it's, because we can't change others. We can change ourselves, and then by our example, others might pick up on it. So it's just, and if someone asks, then you really have the opportunity. They say, you know, I really see that, you know, you seem to have a really good attitude about blah, 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 whatever it is, you know? How are you doing that? Then that's really the opportunity to help, to share what you've learned. But it's, you know, but if they haven't asked for it, that may not be the condition to share. It may just come off as criticism or, you know, or indifference to their feelings, you know, or whatever. So it's really an inner process. The more we can keep this about ourselves and how we change, and not be about how, boy, you'd benefit from it. Which is really hard to do, but it's so important. and also there's this recognition that what works for us may not work for someone else. So,
Well, I know in the beginning, we used to, at meditation courses, if a couple came, we'd ask them to sit separately, because for sure, when they'd start to hear the long rim, they'd look at their partner and say, I knew that was what was wrong with you. Instead of hearing it for yourself.
but this is what we do. So much so that one of the major texts in the Lam-Rim, which just means graduated path, the stages of the path to enlightenment, even in that text, which was written in the 1300s or something, it says, please don't use this information to go around judging others. You know, this is our tendency, you know? Because ironically, it really isn't easier to change others. You know, we just like to fix out here. Well, it doesn't work at all. So that's really beating ourselves up. You know, it's like, how much wasted effort do you want to expend? You know, it's just like, that's not gonna happen. We can control people, you know. We've seen dictators of governments and control entire populations of people by force or by threat of force, you know. But it isn't the same as actually, you know, having a different experience with others. You know, so all we can do is work on our inner self and not have expectations of others to be doing the same. And in fact, when we see them doing things that we know are causing themselves suffering, is to have compassion for them. You know, you may have tools that can help you reduce your suffering, and they may have none. And that's really sad. So it's this, when you see somebody out of control, or really angry, or really sad, or all of those, you know, really strong bad feelings, you know, we can just feel, you know, really have that wish that they'd be free of that suffering, you know, because we know how it feels. We know how bad it feels to suffer in those ways. So it's a natural, that's finding that common ground. So it's really helpful to remind ourselves when we're in the thick of things, you know, to be able to remember, oh yeah, when I act like this is what's going on for me, and that was terrible. Maybe that's what's going on for them. So that we can come from a place of not difference, but sameness. I'm just like you. You know, sometimes I lose it. Sometimes I, you know, whatever. But you don't necessarily share that information because you could be wrong. I mean, but it's just, but still, it's that acknowledgement that when we're angry or impatient or, you know, hurt, we are suffering. You know, it's a reflection of our suffering minds. It's not anything else. It's just an expression of that suffering. It may be a terribly unskillful way, a terribly negative way, but its root is not understanding how to be happy and how to be free of suffering. It's misunderstanding how we exist. But we do the same. And so the more tools we have, the more we can think, oh, I am so, it's gratitude. That's our opportunity for gratitude. As opposed to pride, to that feeling of like, I'm getting my act together, why can't you? That doesn't help, because we don't do it alone, first of all. It's all about, this is the part of, you know, where Buddhism talks so much about dependent arisings. You know, that things, causes and conditions come together for things to happen. So if we've met teachings that help us with our minds, you know, causes and conditions all came together. It's, you know, it's not like, you know, you were just so brilliant that you hit upon this, you know, it's just, it's just causes and conditions coming together, and other people haven't had them come together in this life. And the more we can open our hearts to that, those suffering conditions that create us to be more entrenched in our unskillful habits, you know, the lighter our hearts are, and the less we actually suffer, because we see the world differently. We don't see the world as just something that is, you know, concrete and fixed this way or that way. It's just more of this fluid thing, and that, you know, sometimes you have good conditions, and, you know, with some, you know, if you were taught by functional people, then you end up having functional responses to things, and then, you know, and other times you have terrible conditions arise, and you, for whatever reason, you have learned how to respond to those gracefully and in a helpful manner, and then other times not. So it's a process. So we can look at people who seem to have it together. You know, you look at His Holiness the Dalai Lama, who's you know, encountered all sorts of stressors, you know, as a leader of a nation that's, you know, was overtaken by another nation, you know, and has not been able to go home in, you know, decades and decades and decades. You know, who still smiles a lot, laughs a lot, greets everybody as a friend. You know, that's practice. That's not, oh, he's special. Yes, he's special, but he's special because he's practiced. You know, it's not the other way around. It's not that he's born special and then, you know, we're the beneficiaries of that. It's that his specialness comes from effort. And we all have this capacity. So we can just be happy that someone's succeeding in their path, and we can just try to follow their example as best we can. Okay, so we don't remain strangers in the room. Please introduce yourself to each other. Say hello. Turn around, meet the people behind you.
How you doing? Got your name? I'm John.
Steve.
Steve. I know I've seen you before. What's that?
You're new here, right?
No, I've been coming for a few months. Yeah, relatively. We live in Boynton. So not too far.
So does Ralph.
Exotic land.
Ralph's in Boynton too? Okay. And are you Boca or Hillsborough?
Margate.
Oh, Margate.
Cool Springs area. Good. So you're learning a lot here.
Oh yeah. In fact, I was gonna ask you, Tendrin. I was thinking about coming on Tuesdays, even though I'm still new though, because it's really the only day I can't come on Thursday. What's that?
Yeah,
Okay. I was probably a little advanced for you, but
we're starting a new text, so
that would be perfect. So not obviously this week. But, okay, great. Anyway, do you come to that one, Patrick? I'm sorry. I don't know why I heard Patrick. But I did. Steve, do you come to the Tuesday meetings? I'm trying to learn more.
I usually come here on Sundays. It's a long drive, so I can't come here every day.
Yeah, I can believe it. Yeah, Margate's a church.
it's harder at night.
Did you come to the? I've been to the last couple and liked them, and but yesterday was just. What's that?
4 hours of lectures and meditation is good.
Yeah.
Do you meditate a little bit?
Yeah, I've been trying to get into more of a daily practice, but it's still hard. So a few times a week is what I usually
Life
get
gets
into.
in the way sometimes.
I'm doing well.
Just keep with it, and it gets better.
Thanks.
Practice, practice.
Okay.
You live up in Boynton?
I do.
That's what she was just saying. She heard I did. We're off High Ridge between Gateway and by Biloxi? Are you anywhere near that?
I'm on the east side of town, Boynton.
They're on the other side.
Boynton, east side.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
High Ridge is right next to the highway, so it's east to that east.
Yeah, you're in Secret. Where's High Ridge?
No, it's north of Seacrest.
This is a symbol.
Not geography anymore.
I don't want to bang it
Before we
away.
get yelled at.
Life interferes sometimes.
Symbolizes the end of something.
There you go.
Next.
Very beginning.
Anyway, so did y'all find out how different you are from each other? No. So, anybody meet someone new? Can someone introduce someone new to me? Hi, Joy.
That's Linda.
Hi, Linda.
And that's Anthony.
That's
And
Anthony.
That's Jackie, but she's
Hi.
not new
Oh,
to
okay.
me.
Hi, Jackie. Did you meet anybody new? Same people. Yeah, that's what we do, isn't it? You know, so, I know you got up, and, yes,
Yes, my name is Lorena. And
Lorena?
Yes,
That's,
Lorena. And it's my first time here.
thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And who's behind you? Who are those people?
I'm Catherine, this is my brother Ben.
Hello, Ben. Hello, Catherine.
I'm Susie.
And that's Susie. Linda?
Yes.
Okay, Linda. Joy, Jackie. Lorena?
Yes.
Beata usually is sitting right there.
Manny.
Manny. Anthony.
Yeah.
Steve, I'm teasing.
Patrick?
Who?
John.
John? I'm sorry.
John.
I got the
That's
same thing.
Ralph. They're both from Boynton. And there's Brian.
We got doxed.
Joelle. I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. Carolyn. Right? Okay, next Jack. Elena.
Madison and Angela.
Madison.
We have Joel, Caroline, and we have Corinne and Alex.
Green and Alex.
Yes. He's not Alex. What's your name? Come on. Aleko. Let's just call him right, Aleko.
We have very good names.
Yeah.
Good for my mind to expand my hearing ability. It's not working. Okay. So, all right, okay. The test will be in 7 minutes. I catch myself practicing those little like 3 unrelated terms or something, because I, so that when I go to the doctor and they finally ask me to do those tests, I'll be able to fake it. Which is really self-defeating, but hey. Okay. So what else is going on? Anybody have a burning issue?
I have a lot of issues, but.
Do you have one that's?
I was raised Roman Catholic,
Mhm.
like these Greek Orthodox folks. Well, we have a very open mind, and how we want to approach this new year in our spiritual journey. So I know that we're trying to Buddhism. I've been trying to get into for a while, and this is the first foot forward. However, of course, I don't know how I approach in the sense, because we want to come into all of them. Like, we want to come here, we want to go to the Greek one, or we want to go to the Roman Catholic. And of course, I don't want them to affect, my beliefs, which it does in the sense of, it's everything. Because I do believe a little bit of everything.
Right.
That's like what my burning issue, is, in, what approach, if it is something that it's okay to do, to be able to come to all of them and not feel like a
Right.
little bit all over the place.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? But I think it's really wonderful to, like His Holiness likes to say, if you really want to understand, a different, a faith tradition, you come to something like this, you know, you talk to scholars, you talk to practitioners, you know, and you also do pilgrimage to their places of worship, you know, or their holy places and stuff. And part of this is just to really make that connection, you know, that we're all the same, you know, that they're different paths, you know. In Buddhism, we kind of, you know, look at it from the point of view that, you know, if enlightened beings exist, they are going to find the methods to convey to us how to attain that state and whatever suits our way of thinking, so that we can get there. You know, so of course there are many different religions, because there are many different kinds of minds, and we need to, mind, heart is the same word in Buddhism. And so it's this, you know, they'll find whatever is appropriate to, you know, the people that they're teaching. So there's a reason why there are commonalities in religions, you know. So it's, you know, so learning about how different approaches are, or whatever. I mean, it's, you know, basically it's taught that eventually you need a path, because you can't get somewhere if you're going, you know, you never go forward. You just keep checking things out. Hey, man. But it's this, but we can enrich our understanding of even our own path by understanding others. So we may hear things in a new way that may be important for ourselves, for the path we're already on. So we don't want to end up being just shoppers looking around for just things that suit us. If we never face the hard stuff on the path, we won't make much progress, you know. But it's really is about, you know, that we're trying to grow our understanding, and so that can come from many different sources. Yes.
I kind of want to piggyback off of her. I was raised by a very religious family. My family is still extremely religious. And even when I come around them, they're very comfortable telling me their beliefs and how, you know, this is wrong, that's right. But I can't tell them, the more I fall into the Buddhist doctrines and I become enlightened and I start seeing, like, I feel like I'm red pill. Like, everything starts to look different, feel different for me. I can't tell them how I feel. They're extremely intolerant. And I just see that everywhere I go. When I talk to people, they're extremely comfortable telling me their beliefs. But if I even say, well, I follow the Buddhist doctrines and I go to a temple, they kind of look at me like I have 2-3 heads. And I'll start with my family, you know,
Right.
it branches off of that. I can't go around my family just to say, well, you know, I like Buddhism. Just to say that is already extremely intolerable.
And so what's your question about that?
My question is, how do you deal with that?
Well, it comes back to this, okay, I don't need to be validated by my family. You know, that they may be, you know, it really, because it's true. Can you imagine me going home? I think my dad was really glad the internet existed so he could see what cult I was getting involved in. So, you know, yeah, not everybody is, you can't share. And so what we have to remember is the Buddhist teachings talk a lot about becoming familiar, right? We need to become, meditation is about getting our minds familiar with other, you know, like with compassion and with love and generosity, all these things, okay? And why do you think we use familiarity as a tool? Hmm?
So you embrace it.
Well, it's this,
Understanding.
what are we comfortable with? What we know. What we're familiar with. So we're using that fact to help us get familiar with perhaps more, with things that might help us be more skillful in our search for happiness and reducing suffering. So when you're bringing a new tradition into a culture and so it's completely unfamiliar, it's not a surprise that you're gonna get a response of, also, people are afraid for you. They really don't want you harmed by something they think is really outrageous. So there's a part, not for everybody, of course, some people are just being judgmental, but, for many people, it's coming from this place of, I don't want you to go to hell, So we can hear that, because that's their love and concern for us. And hear that, oh, they love me, and share less. Because it really isn't, it's not about them validating how you think, or about, it doesn't have to be. That's our inner wisdom. We're trying to develop our own inner wisdom. If we look to the world, most of the world is not going to agree with our point of view. And that's probably true on many different ways. So it's about being comfortable with our choices and not having to rely on someone else's viewpoint on that. Now, it's nice, of course it's nice if you can discuss these things, but it's not essential to our happiness, But I do think community's important. We find it elsewhere. You show up here on Sundays, you find ways in which to be able to discuss things. Or you go to places like the Theosophical Society where they're comfortable about talking about many different types. Or you go to a meetup group called, what's it called? Jamalot, where they, where that's the deal, is to come together and just share. I think it started with Jews and Muslims, I think, is how it started. But so these are just avenues, when you just want to feel like you can discuss things. But my dad would ask me one question a year about Buddhism, and he never would let me finish my answer. But it's like, okay, that's enough. Okay, but I'm just grateful that he didn't freak out entirely. He did cut me out of his will. Really. Anyway, but he got over it. So but it's about recognizing that it would feel good to be able to share this with our families, especially if we find it beneficial for the same reason. But if you can't, we have to let go. We can't change others.
But don't you think it's not fair when they're so comfortable telling you what's wrong and you don't agree with that?
They're parents.
Not just parents, just society in general.
Yeah. And that's one of their unskillful methods that bring them suffering. We don't have to judge them for it. We do the same thing in other, we're not skillful in everything. People aren't skillful.
And I'm just basing this off of religion. If someone's constantly telling me, well, you're going to go to hell
Right.
because you believe in this, or you're not living this life, and I'm sitting there saying, well, maybe I don't believe in that, so you can't tell me that I'm going to, this is going to.
Yeah, but what does that do? That just, first of all.
But you're thinking that while the person is telling you this is a sin, that's a sin, this is how the world.
Well, we can't do anything about their minds,
No,
right?
you can't, but you're listening, and in your mind, you're replaying everything they're saying.
No, you don't have to.
I
That's a
don't know.
choice.
That's a choice. But you're just saying, I don't agree with that, and I don't want to live like that.
That's
Thinking
fine.
that.
That's fine. So you don't need to rehearse that in your mind. We all hear points of view we don't like. Watch the news, It's just, we don't need to, just because someone's, this is about growing our inner wisdom. We can reflect on what people tell us, because, hey, they might be onto something, but we want to use our inner wisdom and look at it and think, okay, I don't agree with that. But if we know if we said that out loud, that would just cause anger or fear in the other person. Do we want to be a condition for their anger or fear? Maybe not. It just depends. All of these things, it's all a dependent arising. But it's just, it's about understanding that, I mean, in Buddhism, they talk a lot about, if the world would agree with you, it's probably not Dharma, because the world's a mess, so, but the world's a mess because it's made up of a bunch of people, who don't know what they're doing, including us, so it's not, we just have to look, when we feel, oh, it's not fair, well, we can have lots of discussions about that in the future, but it's we need to recognize, what is it I'm hoping out of this conversation that I'm not getting, and do I want to choose to make it last longer, or do I want to have a battle about it? I mean, you might need to. I mean, sometimes we have to have, you want to sit down with your parents and say, it really hurts me when you're constantly putting down what I think, and da-da-da-da-da. But we have to, we can try that out, we can, whatever. But we have to understand we may not get the result we want. It doesn't always work out that way. And that we can choose to let that damage the relationship, or that you just let go of that hope, whatever. Does that make sense? Yeah, and
Yeah, like my mother wanted her to be baptized and was worried. Like you said, she
Right.
was really worried about her. And so I talked to her and I said, I will make sure she's a good person and she takes care of people and she lives a good life, and that's what matters. And she let go of saying it. I know she still thinks it, and I can't change that, but we stopped talking about it. And she actually came one time with me here. So, she came, she listened, and she was like, it's good, it's not scary, it's not, and there's nothing weird about it, and so you might not ever get there, but sometimes it's just about saying your piece and then
I can also offer that my mother was very concerned about me as well, but I told her I practiced the 10 Commandments as best as I know them to be. I didn't say that. I practiced the 10 Commandments and I love Jesus Christ.
Right.
And I said, what more do you want from me? What more do you want? Because I love Jesus Christ. And somehow that was, I could feel the fire just come out a little bit. And then my parents wanted my daughter baptized, and I had her baptized, because I figured the more blessings.
Hey, what's the harm? Right.
Yeah, so I had no problem, but I did have a Buddhist teacher say to me, why did you have her baptized?
Yeah.
And my response was, why not? I mean, how does it harm that she goes to a church? I'm a little sad that she doesn't know more, but I was raised a Christian, but she was raised a Buddhist, and she doesn't know a whole lot about Christianity. But she did ask, my daughter did ask as she was growing up if she could go to church, and I said, she wanted to take catechism, she wanted to be confirmed, my daughter did. And I said, sure.
It all started with that baptism, you do know that.
But the thing was, there were no Buddhist children around, so it was kind of hard.
Well, this is
growing up
the
as a
thing,
Buddhist.
yeah, and it's just, we just have to look at our own mind. Are we hooked by some expectation or desire, or are we just, so what harm, if you can help, but you don't have to do it that way either. It's not like there's some one right answer, to these different things. We all have to find our pace and our way and our wisdom, our understanding of things, and go, and then we change them as we develop more wisdom. We might have, have done things differently in the past, but that's how it works, isn't it? So it's nothing to worry about. But it's just, it's really about, we're trying to find that, we have to develop, the faith of conviction is talked about a lot in Buddhism, and that's the faith that's based on your own understanding of the teachings as well as your experience of the teachings, so it's not just what you're thinking about, but you're also putting it into practice, and that is convincing faith. It's not just words or just because the Buddha said so, it's because you have, learned this from within, and so you have confidence in it. And then you don't need any validation from others because, Now, you can also be, you know, we have to understand, we can also be crazy. You know, we could be completely off the mark, totally confident in it, you know. And so it's not like we don't need teachers to check in with from time to time. Do a little reality check, you know. But really, in the long run, it's about our inner wisdom. It's because it's an internal process, this letting go of our unskillful habits. You know, and we have to know where our minds are, what works for us, you know. So of course I ended up in a tradition that they use a lot of debate, study, and blah, 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 you know. And I argued a lot growing up. So I'm in the right place for my mind. So, yeah, Ralph.
I was just going to suggest that, you know, reading a lot of the Dalai Lama's work, he knows Christianity very well. He knows lots of faiths very well, as do many other Buddhist teachers, many other gurus. And I think it's really important for us to know how other people think and believe. Me, personally, you know, I do. I know it benefits me. Christmas Eve, I went to a candlelight midnight mass. Sunday morning, I went to a Methodist church I'd never been to before for a service since we were closed. I wanted to have some type of experience. And I think ultimately when you strip away dogma from everything, it's basically what you just mentioned a moment ago. It's all about compassion, generosity, and love. And that's what I'm finding anyway, all traditions and faiths are ultimately based upon. And if you can have that conversation with people, regardless of their faith, ethnicity, creed, whatever, I think we're off to a really good start.
Well, interfaith dialogue is really helpful that way. You know, and it's understanding that we have different views. The different religions have a different description of how things came to be and how they are, and, you know, and all of that. And of course, I'm in the right one. But it's, you know, but it's just, it's the character traits, the kinds of good qualities that we want to develop are pretty much the same, you know, in their teachings, not necessarily in the interpretations of the students, you know, so, but in the words from the, you know, of the masters of that religion, you know, are pretty similar in terms of what's valued and helpful and useful. And so isn't that good news? It's like, you know, we don't have to have arguments about those. It's like we may not agree about, you know, why the sky's blue, but we can, you know, really understand these things about love and compassion, and, you know, it's kind of cool. Yeah.
And even if you meet Buddhist teachers who are really profound, like Lama Geshe, Lama used to say that Lama's job was, that Lama knew Lama had been successful with his teachings if his students loved their mother and father more and practiced their own religion better.
Right. This is the thing, isn't it? Because we're talking about the heart here. You know, it's if we can, it's about opening that heart. So if we, you know, it certainly shouldn't close more doors. You know, so we have to ask ourselves, am I closing more doors? You know, and if we are, maybe we want to rethink how we're looking at it, how we're approaching it. Get some, you know, read more teachings, come to more classes. You know. So it's, and this is why I harp on, and I know I harp on it, about this not judging others based on what you're learning from the teachings. That it's, you know, that's closing doors. It's just like, you're not good enough. You're not good enough. You know, I'm not going to look in the mirror, but you're. So we have to, you know, we want to expand our circle of concern, not reduce it. So, but it's not easy. If it was easy, we'd all be doing it. Yeah.
Hi. I have a coworker who we get along very well together, and she's always, every time something good happens to her, she's always saying, you know, thank you, Jesus, thank you, you know, Lord Jesus. Without Jesus, this would not have happened. So I just, at that point, I keep my mouth, I get like this like little feeling of anger that I quickly diminish right away because I know it's not supposed to be there just because I don't agree with her. So I just like kind of don't say anything and wonder is that really making her happy, having Jesus as her, maybe it is, it could, but she doesn't necessarily have to be suffering because she believes that everything that good happens to her is because of Jesus.
We have the same saying. It's, that all our positive qualities are the enlightened activity of the Buddhas. Same idea, that in other words, we learn our good qualities from people who are practicing. So everything that, so there's nothing to feel prideful about. We got it from someone else, that all of our good qualities are dependent on other people, other sentient beings, so that it's, and so we have to just look at our own mind. What is it about that statement that gets at us, and work from that place, and just kind of like, and rejoice if it brings happiness to someone else. It's like if it doesn't do any harm. Now it's different if someone's harming someone else. If you don't believe the way I believe, I'm going to kill you. That's something where an intervention is needed. But it's this. We don't know what's going on in the minds of others. Yeah.
I'm relatively new to Buddhism, mainly for books. But my question is, what's the purpose of prayer in Buddhism?
Right. Purpose of prayer, it's like a wish. They often describe prayers as wishes, that they're a wish that we will be able to do this or that, or a wish that all beings are not suffering. But it's this. It's a reminder of where we want to go. It's sort of like we want our hearts to be able to include everybody, and so our prayers to enlightened beings are sort of this idea of you've succeeded in this. You have this ability to have great compassion, great love, and I hope that I can do the same. And I hope that that we often say, please bless me is a part of the way it's translated into English and things like that. And what that means is we hope that the teachings become internalized in us.
But it sounds a lot like Christianity.
Yeah.
The rest of the religions.
Yeah.
And so are we getting out of one religion into
No,
another?
no, this is the Buddhist practice.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. It strikes me a lot as the same practice that is being done anywhere in the world, in any religion in the world.
Yep. So is there a problem with that?
No.
Okay.
But it's something I didn't expect.
Right. Right, I understand that. But the idea, of course, what we mean by, you're asking for the Buddha's help. What's meant by that is like I said, that you create the conditions to be able to hear the teachings, and then you're able to actually internalize them and act from that place. Which I think is the same thing in Christianity. You use Christ as the example, and that we're trying to live as he lived. So I don't think there's any difference. The only real difference between, in about the idea of enlightened mind and the God, as far as I understand, in Christianity or Abrahamic religions, is that it's a creator God. And we don't have that in Buddhism. We don't have the idea that there's a powerful being that created everything. So it's a different view.
But you mentioned something that created another question. Did the Buddha ever say, pray to me? If you pray, I will enlighten you, I'll help you see things?
He can't enlighten you.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. If we
So he
pray
wouldn't have
to the
said that.
Buddha to help us see the path, he never said, pray to me and
I'm not actually sure about that.
I'll come out of the ether and help you out over here, right? He never actually
But
said that.
you're putting words into the prayers that aren't there.
Okay.
Okay, so.
I'm trying to understand the purpose
Right,
of the
I
prayer,
understand that.
right.
The purpose is to remind us of how we want to be. So like the purpose of coming in and seeing altars and making prostrations is to remember the qualities of the beings that embody those, you know. So we're trying to go, I want to be like that. And so I'm going to follow the advice of the, you know, who've traveled this path before me and try to attain that. And then, you know, in Buddhism it's said that if we create the cause, you know, that we will meet our teachers. That if we, you know, that it's a two-way street. You know, you are not going to meet the teachers unless you create the cause to meet the teachers. You know, and so our good actions create conditions to get further instruction from the teachers. So it's sort of ongoing, but it's so I think in some ways it really depends on in the minds of the people saying the prayers if there's any difference at all. There may be no difference, you know, depending on what's in the mind of the people thinking those prayers. But it comes down to basically wishes for either others or ourselves to be able to attain these qualities and to be free of suffering because the cause of our suffering is our own past actions. We're responsible for our own suffering or happiness. And so we want to learn how to have the causes for happiness instead of the causes of suffering. And we rely on the teachings and enlightened beings to tell us how to do that. So it's, you know, but the prayers are just wishes that we attain those things. You know, with the knowledge, I mean, in Buddha, you know, that they can't do it for us, that there's no all-powerful being that can come and, you know, clean out our minds and put us on the right track in the sense of doing it for us. That's not doable. Otherwise it'd be done, you know. So, and I think all religions basically are stating that, you know, you know, we can't make that choice for you. You have to choose to do these actions, try to change your mind, try to understand the view. It's not like Buddhism is an attempt to be different from everybody else or something. You know, the Buddha just described what he learned through his practice. You know, of how things exist, cause and effect, the relationship of consciousness on our cause and effect, you know, those kinds of things. How suffering, it's not just that suffering exists, that's, you know, the truth of suffering, we need to look at that, but there's a truth to the origin of suffering, and it's not outside of us. The origin of suffering is also our mind and our actions that arise from our mind. So, and the fact that we misunderstand how things exist. You know, it's like what we were talking about earlier, this desire for things to stay the same, you know, what we're familiar with, and how, good luck with that, because everything's changing constantly. And so our just resistance to that fact brings us suffering. So really getting that, really understanding how we hold on to things that are impossible is part of our suffering. So then, you know, and then slowly. So, I don't know if that answers anything.
It did, thank you.
Okay. There's a lot to discuss.
Well, Venerable Tenrin, for those of us who have relatives and friends who want to criticize Buddhism and don't understand it, is there some simple book or literature we could offer them so they could read about it?
I don't know. I'm not sure. You know, it really depends. I mean, sure, there's some descriptions and things, and there are interfaith things that might be helpful, but it really depends on your situation. You know, you have to come from a place that's not trying to attack, change, or whatever. You know, they can come here. They can, you know, it's you know, it's really. I don't have one. Do you have one off the top of your head?
Becoming your own therapist.
I don't know. That wouldn't work on my family.
An Idiot's Guide to Buddhism.
I don't know.
Buddhism for dummies?
I like the art of racing in the rain.
Well, yeah, that might, yeah. Yeah, but you know, I mean, the Book of Joy is really nice because it's got two different religious leaders talking about things, and then, you know, I don't know, I don't have one off the top of my head or anywhere else. So, you know, but I might explore that. Who knows? Maybe Lauren might have an idea when he comes through. Yeah. But just be aware that, you know, that there is no perfect answer to these things. It's gonna depend on your relationship with you know, whatever. But we do convey things, and I've gone over time, I just didn't realize it. I mean, the last time I looked, it was 10 till 12. Sorry. So, you know, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so let's dedicate, and you can think about all the wonderful things that you've done this year, you know, whatever. You know, and then we're dedicating, that's creating the cause for our happiness in the future. And those potentials for those results of happiness, we want to share with others who are suffering. So that's kind of the point about dedication prayers. We're giving away our potential for happiness so that others may be happy. What page, 244? 246. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled, with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain, to dispel the miseries of the world. So we don't have class this week on Tuesday. Tomorrow, for those of you who, you know, want to continue their cleaning up their karma, we have a purification practice tomorrow at 11.
Medicine Buddha Puja and Vajrasattva.
Oh, okay. I'll show up for that. Medicine Buddha Puja and Vajrasattva. Medicine Buddha is about, you know, whatever. So, it's all English. It's all in English, but it's, you know, it's all about prayers to, you know, to remove suffering.
And then Thursday we're doing refuge.
Yes, Thursday night, our Discovering Buddhism series starts with a new class on refuge, taking refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So that kind of gives you a kind of a clue. If you know, if you're new to Buddhism, what does it mean to people who consider themselves Buddhist? What does going for refuge mean? And it's not, of course, very different from what going for refuge means in English. So, but it's obviously from its own Buddhist perspective. And then a week from Tuesday, we start our more intermediate class on the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, Shanti-Teva's book on that, which is a very traditional text and lovely. So, what else?
Next Sunday, we'll start back up with the meditation, 10:15 to 10:45.
Yeah.
We also have newcomers welcoming after class.
Yeah, so those people who are new, if you have some questions, you don't want to just spit out during class or whatever, and want to just, you know, you're curious about things, whatever, stay after class next Sunday, and I'll be happy to answer those for you. And we'll have meditation from 10:15 to 10:45 for those who like that.
And then starting February 4th, Jackie will be leading Meditation 101 on Monday evenings.
So a
from
month
7 to
from
9.
now, well, you'll get the flyers about that.
On that note, could I express gratitude to Jackie for leading us in the next one?
Jackie is our meditation teacher, and she does our practice days here at the center, which are all-day practice days on Saturdays, and they're great. That's basically always what I hear. They are great. So-
I'm sorry.
Where were they?
Where was I? Yesterday?
Yeah.
I really, really struggled with not going, to be honest with you.
Good,
But there was
good.
so
We
much
want
to
you
get
to-
done.
Oh my
Just
God.
because it's the weekends. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But for the newcomers, yeah, I agree. I took her last meditation one. It's fantastic. If you don't know meditation, yeah.
She's the
Very
founder
good.
of the center, so she's been around quite a while and knew Lama Yeshe personally. So we are very indebted to her help.
Sorry, what day was Saturday?
Tuesday nights.
It's all on the calendar, check
It's
the
all on the
website.
calendar. Is Beata here?
Yeah, she's someone.
Yeah, let me go, you want me to go get her?
Go get her.
Okay.
I'll get her.
Okay.
And yeah, that's all. right?
No, there's one
No,
more
there's
thing.
more.
Beata,
Never ends.
Jeez.
So much to do.
Anyway, tomorrow is our direct, come on in. Jeez. Sorry. You know, it's a community.
I hate
Well,
surprises.
I know.
Well, it's not a surprise
Well,
now.
yeah.
Ha ha.
I know.
So, yeah.
Tomorrow is our director, Nicole, who will all meet because she's always in the greeting you, birthday. Now,
Okay.
sing.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to
Oh, we
you.
have the age on
Happy birthday, dear Nicole. Happy birthday to you. He's 4.
So big 4-0.
Yeah, I am.
So Phil,
Thank you.
are people staying to have cake?
We would like ask if anybody can join us for lunch in the Indian buffet.
Which is right downstairs.
Yes, to spend few minutes with Nicole and to wish her happy birthday and thanks for everything what she's doing for us every day. Not
just-
only when we're here, but also when she's working home, when we don't see her. But if anybody can stay with us,
Please
please
take
stay
some
for
cake.
cake because we want, we want to share.
And lunch is at 1:30.
Yes, and lunch is downstairs, but please stay for
It costs
cake.
about $15.
Yes, everybody, of course, we.
But have a piece of cake.
Yes.
40, ha ha ha. So thank you. So
Yes,
that's it,
Thank
Manny.
you, thank you all.
Sorry, that was long, but I actually had something to say.
Closing that out.
You know what I mean?
Thank
When you
you.
go to
Thank you.